The cold gets you before anything else does. Not gently either. This is 20,000 years ago, deep in the grip of the last ice age, and mornings here don't ease you into consciousness. They shove you into it. You're curled into a nest of furs, mammoth hide on the outside, wolf and reindeer pelts stacked underneath, and, if you're lucky, someone's arm thrown over you for extra warmth, because in this world, personal space is a luxury nobody has invented yet. The shelter around you is a mix of animal bone, hide, and packed earth, built low to the ground so the wind screams past instead of through. Outside, the wind is doing exactly that. You can hear it. It sounds personally offended that you're still alive. The fire in the center of the shelter has burned down to a bed of orange coals, and someone, probably the person whose job it is this week, is already awake, feeding it twigs like it's a picky toddler that refuses anything bigger. Fire is the single most valuable thing in your life right now. More valuable than food, more valuable than the clothes on your back, because without it, both of those things stop mattering very quickly. You don't have matches, you don't have a lighter. If this fire goes out, someone is about to have a very bad, very cold day, and possibly the last one they ever have. You sit up. Every joint you own makes its complaints known immediately. Nobody in the Ice Age dies of old age looking spry. The cold, the grinding labor and diet that's basically feast or famine on a loop means that by your 30s you move like someone's grandfather. But you're alive, which, by the actuarial standards of this era, is already an accomplishment worth a small parade. You crawl out from under the furs and the cold hits your skin like an insult. Your breath fogs instantly. Somewhere outside, the world is the color of a bruise. Gray sky, white ground, dark tree line in the distance where the taiga forest gives way to open tundra. This is a landscape with almost no mercy in it. No supermarkets, no thermostats. Just ice, wind, and whatever you can kill, gather, or steal from nature before nature notices and takes it back. The first order of business, before food, before anything, is clothing, and this isn't a matter of style. Nobody here is worried about looking good, mostly because there's no mirror, and even if there were, the reflection would just be someone in 3 layers of dead animal looking extremely cold. You pull on leggings stitched from reindeer hide, sewn tight with sinew thread, and bone needles that someone spent hours carving down to a fine point. The stitching is tiny, deliberate, waterproof where it needs to be. Whoever made these clothes, likely an older woman in your group whose eyesight is somehow still sharper than yours despite decades of squinting at needlework by firelight, deserves a medal. Instead, she gets more sewing to do, because that's how life works here. Over the leggings goes a tunic, then a hooded outer layer stuffed with dried moss and grass for insulation, because down jackets are, unfortunately, 40,000 years away from being invented. Your boots are the real marvel, though. Soft-soled, fur-lined, wrapped and tied with leather cord, designed to keep your feet from freezing solid on a walk across packed snow. Losing toes to frostbite isn't a hypothetical here. It's a Tuesday. Now, breakfast. Or whatever you want to call the first meal of the day, since there's no cereal, no bread, and definitely no coffee, which honestly might be the single biggest hardship of Ice Age life and nobody ever mentions it. You eat what's left from last night, strips of dried meat, tough and salty from smoking over the fire, maybe some stored fat rendered down into something like a primitive energy bar. If you're fortunate, someone foraged nuts or dried berries in the last warm stretch and stashed them for exactly this kind of morning. Calories are currency here, and fat is the crown jewel of that currency, because in a climate like this, fat means survival. The skinniest person in the group is not the one everyone admires. The person with a healthy layer of body fat is the one who's clearly doing something right. Outside the shelter, the rest of your group is stirring. Maybe 15 to 30 people total. A band, not a village, small enough that everyone knows everyone's business, and large enough that gossip travels approximately at the speed of sound. There's no privacy here. If you had an argument with your partner 2 nights ago, everyone knows. Everyone has an opinion, and someone's already made a joke about it that isn't very funny, but you all still laugh anyway because entertainment options are limited, and mockery is free. The group functions less like a family and more like a very small, very intense company where everyone has a job and there's no HR department to complain to. There are the hunters, usually a mix of younger and middle-aged adults with the strength and stamina for a multi-day chase. There are the gatherers, often but not exclusively the women who know every edible plant, root, and fungus within a day's walk, and who quietly hold more survival knowledge in their heads than anyone else in the group. There are the tool makers who can look at a chunk of flint and see the exact shape of the blade hiding inside it. There are the children, running around in miniature versions of the same fur clothing, already learning to snare small animals before they've lost all their baby teeth. And there are the elders who don't do as much physical labor anymore but function as a kind of a walking encyclopedia, the ones who remember which valley flooded 11 winters ago, which mushroom looks like a good one but will kill you in an afternoon, and where the good flint deposits are 3 days' walk to the east. This morning, the plan is a hunting trip. Word came in 2 days ago from a scouting pair that a small herd of reindeer was moving along a valley to the north. And reindeer, for a group like yours, is basically the entire economy in one animal. Meat for food, hide for clothing and shelter, sinew for thread and bowstrings, bone and antler for tools, needles, harpoon points, fat for fuel and for eating. Even the stomach contents get used, believe it or not, as a source of partially digested plant nutrients in a diet that's otherwise brutally short on greens for half the year. Efficiency here isn't a virtue. It's the difference between eating this month and not. A group of 6 sets out. 4 men, 2 women, all carrying spears tipped with carefully napped stone points lashed on with sinew, plus a couple of the younger ones carrying extra cordage, hide bags, and a fire kit in case the hunt runs long and a camp needs to be made overnight. You're one of them. Your spear is balanced, familiar in your hand, the wood shaft worn smooth from your own grip over months of use. It isn't fancy. It doesn't need to be. It needs to fly straight and hit hard. And it does both, because you spent an embarrassing number of hours last summer practicing throws at a target that was, at various points, a fallen log, an old bone, and once, memorably, your cousin's backside, on a dare that he has not fully forgiven you for. The walk to the valley takes hours. This is not a leisurely stroll. The tundra stretches out in every direction, flat and white, broken by outcrops of rock and low scrubby vegetation that somehow survives conditions that would kill most things instantly. Mammoth Steppe, some call this ecosystem, a strange cold grassland that supported an entire cast of Ice Age megafauna. Woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceros, giant deer with antlers the size of small trees, herds of bison and horses, and predators eager to eat every single one of them, including possibly you. Speaking of predators, and this is a fact that should keep anyone humble, you are not the top of the food chain out here. Cave lions prowl this landscape, bigger than any lion alive today, and they do not care that you have a spear and a can-do attitude. There are cave hyenas, capable of cracking bone like it's nothing. There are wolves, in packs, patient and smart. And then there's the one that truly puts things in perspective. The cave bear, a creature that can stand taller than a doorway and could turn your entire hunting trip into a very short, very sad story. Every single person on this hunt is watching the tree line, the rock formations, the shadows, not just for prey, but for the things that consider you prey right back. Nature out here doesn't do hierarchies. It just does hungry. You spot fresh tracks about 2 hours in, reindeer, moving at a walk, not a run, which is good news because it means they haven't caught your scent yet. The group fans out in near silence, communicating through hand signals developed over years of doing exactly this. Someone points, someone crouches, everyone freezes. This is the part of hunting nobody glamorizes. Not the chase, not the kill, but the hours of dead silence, moving at a snail's pace across frozen ground, muscles locked with tension, waiting for the exact right moment. Patience here isn't a virtue. It's a job requirement, non-negotiable, unpaid, and absolutely exhausting. The herd comes into view across a shallow ridge, maybe a dozen reindeer, grazing on lichen they've dug out from under a thin layer of snow with their hooves. The plan, worked out in whispers before you even left camp, is to drive a couple of the weaker-looking animals toward a natural bottleneck between two rock outcrops, where spears can do their work at close range. This isn't brute force. It's strategy, geography, and teamwork, refined over generations, because Ice Age humans figured out a long time ago that trying to simply outrun a reindeer is a losing bet. They're faster than you. They've always been faster than you. What you have that they don't is a plan. By the way, if you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube. What they feared, how they communicated, what hunted them, and much more. Plus an exclusive PDF guide included. Link in the description. See you inside. The chase when it comes is fast, loud, and chaotic in exactly the way that all the quiet patience beforehand was not. Someone shouts, the herd bolts, hooves thunder against frozen ground, and for about 90 seconds, pure adrenaline takes over from strategy. One reindeer breaks toward the bottleneck exactly as planned. Small miracles do happen occasionally, and two spears find their mark within seconds of each other. The animal goes down. The rest of the herd scatters into the distance. And just like that, the hard part is over. The other hard part, the one nobody warns you about, is about to begin. Because now you have to actually get this reindeer, several hundred pounds of meat, hide, and bone, back to camp. And reindeer do not come with wheels. The butchering starts almost immediately, right there in the field, because letting the meat sit exposed for too long invites every scavenger in a 5-mile radius to the party, and you'd rather not share. Stone knives, razor sharp from careful napping, go to work with a precision that would honestly surprise people who assume cavemen were clumsy brutes swinging clubs around. Every part gets used. The hide gets separated carefully, kept whole where possible for clothing and shelter material. The meat gets divided into portions that can be carried. The organs, rich in nutrients that are otherwise hard to come by in an Ice Age diet, get eaten fresh, right there, because they don't preserve well, and wasting food out here is close to a moral crime. The antlers, bones, and sinew all get bundled up too, because an antler isn't garbage. It's a future harpoon point, a future needle, a future tool that hasn't been invented yet but definitely will be, probably by someone in your camp with too much time and a bad case of boredom this winter. The walk back is slower, heavier, and honestly the most physically punishing part of the entire day. Everyone carries a share of the load, hide sacks straining under fresh meat, the smell of blood clinging to your hands despite the cold. Nobody complains. Not out loud anyway, because complaining doesn't make the load lighter and everyone knows it. There is, however, a running joke about whose turn it is to carry the head, which nobody wants and which somehow, suspiciously, always seems to land on the same unlucky guy. He takes it with the weary resignation of a man who has clearly been the group's designated head carrier since roughly the dawn of time. Back at camp, the mood shifts entirely. Word of a successful hunt travels fast, and there's a kind of relief in the air that's hard to describe unless you've lived somewhere where a single failed hunt can mean genuinely tight weeks ahead. Children come running out to see the kill. The elders nod approvingly, already mentally cataloging which cuts should be smoked, which should be eaten fresh tonight, and which fat should be rendered and stored for the truly brutal stretch of winter still ahead. Meat gets hung, some of it near the fire for smoking. A preservation method that lets food last for weeks in a world without refrigerators, ice boxes, or, again, any of the modern conveniences that make you appreciate your kitchen a little more after hearing all this. While the hunters were out risking their lives for dinner, the rest of camp wasn't exactly on vacation. The gatherers spent the morning working a nearby stretch of forest edge and rocky slope, collecting whatever the frozen landscape was, willing to offer up. This time of year, that's not much. Some tough roots, a handful of edible lichen, maybe a stash of pine nuts if someone remembers where the squirrels have been hiding theirs, because stealing from squirrels is, unfortunately, a legitimate and time-honored survival strategy. There's a particular skill in knowing exactly which plants won't kill you, which is a skill passed down almost entirely through oral tradition, trial, error, and in at least one uncomfortable story that gets retold every winter. The unfortunate fate of someone's great uncle who really should have asked before eating. The toolmakers, meanwhile, have been busy at what is essentially the Ice Age equivalent of a workshop, a flat rock surface littered with flint flakes, hammerstones, and half-finished projects. Making a stone tool isn't a matter of just bashing two rocks together and hoping for the best, though it might look that way to an untrained eye. It's a precise, almost meditative process called knapping, where a skilled hand strikes a piece of flint at exact angles to peel off thin, sharp flakes, gradually shaping a blade, a scraper, or a spear point. It takes years to get good at this. Bad knapping means a spear point that shatters on impact instead of piercing hide, which, when your spear point shattering happens to coincide with an angry, wounded animal charging you, is the kind of mistake you generally only make once. There's also the never-ending work of maintaining the shelter itself, which in this brutal climate is basically an ongoing renovation project with no end date. Wind and snow batter the hide coverings daily, and someone is constantly checking for gaps, reinforcing weak spots, packing more snow around the base to block drafts. The frame itself might be built from mammoth bones and tusks in areas where wood is scarce. An entire shelter, essentially, made from the skeleton of a creature that's been extinct in most of our imaginations as some mythical beast, but was to you just a very large, very useful animal that occasionally required an entire hunting party and a great deal of luck to bring down. By midday, the sun, such as it is, a pale disk barely cutting through the gray, so it sits low on the horizon. Because at this latitude and time of year, daylight is a stingy, limited resource. You don't get long, lazy afternoons. You get a handful of usable hours of light, and every single one of them needs to count. There's no wasting time here scrolling through anything, mostly because scrolling hasn't been invented, screens haven't been invented, and honestly, the closest thing you have to entertainment is watching your cousin try to skin a hide badly and fail spectacularly in front of everyone. Speaking of entertainment, don't assume Ice Age life is all grim survival with zero joy in it, because that would be selling your ancestors short. There is laughter here. There is music, of a kind. Someone's carved a simple flute from a hollow bird bone. And in the evenings it gets passed around, producing sounds that are more enthusiasm than skill, but nobody minds. There's storytelling, which is arguably the original form of entertainment, and also doubles as a survival manual, since stories about which valley to avoid, which animal to respect from a distance, and which mushroom will ruin your entire week get passed down generation to generation wrapped in narrative instead of dry instruction. There's art, too. Deep in nearby caves, some of your people have been painting animals on the walls with charcoal and ochre, images so detailed and alive that thousands of years later, people will stand in front of them completely stunned that hunter-gatherers made something that beautiful. You'd probably find that reaction a little funny. Of course you made something beautiful. You had a fire, some free time, and a talented cousin. What else were you supposed to do? The afternoon brings smaller, quieter tasks. Hides need scraping and softening, a laborious process involving stone scrapers, animal brains. Yes, brains. The fat content in brain tissue makes it remarkably effective for tanning hide. A detail that sounds disgusting until you remember these people didn't have chemical tanneries and needed something that worked. And a lot of repetitive, arm-aching effort. Someone is twisting plant fiber and sinew into cordage, a skill so fundamental to survival that entire toolkits, snares, and shelters depend on. Someone getting the tension exactly right. A couple of the older kids are out checking snares set the previous day for smaller game. Hares, ptarmigan, anything that adds a little variety and a little extra protein to a diet that would otherwise be relentlessly, monotonously, meat and fat. There's a moment in the early afternoon when one of the younger children comes tearing back into camp, wide-eyed, babbling about something huge moving along the ridge to the east. Everyone tenses immediately because something huge in this landscape has a short and terrifying list of possibilities. A quick, careful look confirms it. A small group of woolly mammoths, moving slowly across the horizon, indifferent to the tiny, cold humans watching them from a very respectful distance. Mammoths are not something you casually hunt on a whim. Taking one down requires enormous planning, an entire group working in coordinated effort, pit traps, or driving the animal toward a cliff or bog, and even then it's dangerous enough that people occasionally die trying. Today isn't a mammoth day. Today you just watch them pass, massive and shaggy and strange against the white landscape, and there's something almost peaceful about it. watching a giant of a bygone world go about its business, blissfully unconcerned with your entire species' future extinction debates. As the light starts to fade, and again, it fades fast here because Ice Age winters do not believe in generous daylight hours. Camp starts pulling itself together for the evening. The fire that's been smoldering all day gets built up properly now. Flames rising, throwing warm orange light across faces that have spent the entire day squinting against wind and snow glare. This fire isn't just warmth, it's the literal center of social life. Everyone gathers around it because there's genuinely nowhere else to be once the sun goes down. And because being anywhere else, alone, in the dark, in this landscape, is a decision that tends to sharply reduce your life expectancy. Dinner tonight is good, better than most nights thanks to the successful hunt. Fresh reindeer meat roasts over the fire, fat crackling and dripping, and the smell alone is enough to draw everyone in close. There's no seasoning to speak of beyond maybe some wild herbs someone tossed in, no side dishes, no dessert, but nobody's complaining because after a day like today, calories are calories, and this is, by any honest measure, a feast. Someone shares out the fat separately, a delicacy in its own right in a diet that desperately needs it, and there's a kind of quiet, focused satisfaction to the meal that modern dinner tables, frankly, rarely achieve. Nobody's checking a phone. Nobody's distracted. Everyone is simply thoroughly present, chewing, watching the fire, occasionally laughing at whatever joke's making the rounds tonight. The stories start once stomachs are full. Someone retells the hunt from earlier, already exaggerating slightly, the reindeer growing bigger and more dangerous with every telling, because embellishment, it turns out, is a universal human tradition that long predates written history. The elders offer their own contributions, memories of harder winters, memories of migrations, memories of people who aren't around the fire anymore, spoken about gently, with the kind of casual, matter-of-fact grief that comes from living in a world where loss is common and unavoidable, but never treated as something to hide from or ignore. Death is close here. Always. Infant mortality is brutally high. Hunting accidents happen. Sickness that would be a minor inconvenience in another era can be fatal here. And yet, remarkably, the people around this fire aren't crushed by that reality. They've built an entire culture, resilient and warm, specifically because that reality demands it. Someone starts singing, low and rhythmic, and a few voices join in, off-key in a way that's somehow more charming than annoying. The flute comes out again. A couple of the younger members of the group start something that's less a dance and more an enthusiastic, uncoordinated flail near the fire, and everyone laughs, including the two flailing, who seem entirely unbothered by their own lack of rhythm. This is what leisure looks like out here. Simple, communal, unplugged in the most literal sense possible, because there's nothing here to plug into in the first place. As the fire burns lower and eyes start growing heavy, people start peeling off toward their shelters. There's a final check of the fire, making sure it's banked properly to smolder through the night without either dying out or getting so big it becomes a hazard. Someone takes first watch, because even at night, especially at night, this landscape doesn't stop being dangerous. And a set of eyes staying alert near camp is the difference between everyone waking up in the morning and a very different kind of story getting told around next year's fire. You crawl back into your shelter, back under the furs, the cold air outside already turning your nose numb the second you stop moving. Your muscles ache in that deep, satisfied way that comes from a genuinely hard day's work. Tomorrow will bring its own tasks. More hide work, probably. Maybe another hunting trip if the meat runs low faster than expected. Definitely more of the endless, grinding maintenance that keeping a group of people alive in an Ice Age winter requires. There's no retirement here, no days off, no vacation days accruing somewhere. But there's also no boredom, no existential dread about what any of it means. Because meaning out here is about as straightforward as it gets. Stay warm, stay fed, stay together, watch the sky for danger and the horizon for opportunity, and try every single day to make it to the next one. The wind is still screaming outside as you drift off, the fire crackling low nearby, the weight of fur blankets and the warmth of the person curled beside you doing their combined best against a cold that would kill you in hours without them. Somewhere out on the tundra, a wolf howls, distant and lonely, and it doesn't even register as frightening anymore, just background noise. Just another sound in a world that's been trying to kill you since the moment you were born, and that you've been, so far, remarkably, stubbornly, successfully refusing to let win. And tomorrow, the sun barely rising over the frozen steppe, you'll do it all again. Because in the Ice Age, there is no other option. And somehow, against every possible odds, stacked by ice, cold, predators, and a climate that seems personally invested in your failure, that's exactly enough.